There was a boy named Henry, a quiet soul from a small, forgotten town, where the air always felt heavy, as if carrying whispers from things unseen. People said Henry was different. He didn't speak much, didn't smile often, but those who looked closely into his eyes would see something restless, something that never truly slept. One night, after a violent argument with his family, Henry slammed the door and stormed out of the house. The words still echoed in his mind, bitter, sharp, unforgiving. His mother had cried, his father had shouted, and Henry's heart had cracked somewhere deep inside. He didn't know where he was going, but his feet led him to the edge of the forest, a place the townsfolk avoided after dark. That forest wasn't like any other. It was old, ancient, even older than the town itself. The trees grew close together, twisting around one another like they were trying to strangle the sky. When the wind passed through them, it didn't sound like wind. It sounded like voices, whispers, murmurs that didn't quite belong to this world. Henry carried something in his hand, a coarse rope, coiled tight like a snake ready to strike. It was a piece of the same rope his father used to hang old tools in the shed. Tonight, Henry wanted to use it for something else. He walked deeper into the forest. The moonlight struggled to pierce the thick branches, and shadows moved like living things. Somewhere behind him, twigs cracked one after another as if someone was following, matching his steps perfectly. He turned around. Nothing. Only the dark, breathing trees. "Stop it," he whispered to himself. "It's just the wind." But the forest didn't answer. Instead, something laughed, softly, like a sigh. Henry's hands trembled as he tied the rope around a low branch of a crooked tree. The bark felt wet, almost warm. He didn't want to touch it again. The smell of damp earth rose around him. The silence pressed against his ears until it began to hurt. He looked up at the branch. "This is it," he muttered. "No one will care anyway." But before he could place the rope around his neck, he heard it. A voice. It wasn't loud. It wasn't human. It came from behind him, low and broken, like it came from a throat that hadn't spoken in centuries. "Do it." Henry froze. His breath stopped. He turned slowly, scanning the trees. No one was there, only the fog, curling between the trunks like pale fingers. He stepped back. Then again. "Do it, Henry. Do it now." His heart pounded so hard he thought it might tear through his ribs. The rope slipped from his hands. He ran, stumbled, fell, and kept running until he saw the first flicker of light from his house far away. That night, he didn't tell anyone. He locked himself in his room and stared at the ceiling until dawn. His body was safe, but his mind, it wasn't. Because as the first light of morning crept through the window, Henry saw something that made his blood freeze. On his neck, faint but visible, was a red mark, round and thin, the shape of a rope. And from outside, faint through the morning fog, he could still hear that whisper. It wasn't wind. It wasn't imagination. It was the same voice, still calling his name. Henry. Days passed, but Henry's nights turned darker. The mark around his neck never faded, a thin red bruise that felt warmer than the rest of his skin, as if something beneath it still pulsed. His mother noticed it once. She asked what happened, her voice trembling. Henry smiled weakly and said he tripped on a wire in the forest. She believed him, or perhaps she only wanted to. But Henry knew better. He knew what he heard that night wasn't his imagination. And yet, he told himself it must have been, because the alternative was far worse. The forest lay behind his house like a living wall, tall, breathing, watching. Every night when he closed his eyes, he saw the same crooked tree where he had tied the rope. Sometimes in his dreams, it looked like a hand, reaching down from the sky. Other times, it bled from its bark, slow, thick, dark. Then came the voices. At first, they came only in his dreams. They whispered through the darkness like cold smoke. "Come back. We're waiting. You left too soon." Each morning, he woke up drenched in sweat, his window fogged from his own breath. Though he didn't remember opening it, his bedsheets smelled faintly of soil. The scent grew stronger each night. Then the voices stopped, waiting for him to sleep. One evening, while Henry sat alone in his room sketching something, anything to distract himself, the pencil moved strangely in his hand. He wasn't drawing what he wanted to. His hand shook, curved, traced shapes on its own. When he looked down, his heart froze. It was a perfect drawing of the tree in the forest. The same branch, the same rope swaying in the wind, and beneath it, in jagged, uneven letters, were the words, "You forgot something." The next moment, the lights flickered. The air turned heavy, thick, as if the room had sunk underwater. The mirror across from his desk shimmered. For a second, he saw something behind his reflection, a figure standing in the shadows. Its head tilted. Its smile didn't belong to the living. Henry gasped and turned around. The room was empty, but when he looked back at the mirror, the reflection was still there, staring at him, swaying slightly, as though hanging from an invisible rope. He smashed the glass. For 3 nights after that, Henry didn't sleep. He stayed awake listening to the forest through his window. The town was silent, but he could still hear faint rustling to rhythmic to be wind. Once, at around a.m., he swore he heard footsteps on the gravel path leading to the woods. Slow, dragging, and then came the smell. The air filled with the stench of damp wood and rot. The same smell that clung to him after that night in the forest. He couldn't escape it. He started speaking less. People at school said he looked sick, pale, almost translucent. His best friend, Aaron, asked him what was wrong. Henry just said, "Someone keeps calling me. I don't know who." Aaron laughed, nervously. "You mean on the phone?" Henry looked at him with empty eyes. "No, from the trees." That night, Aaron heard knocking on his window. When he pulled the curtain aside, no one was there, just the faint outline of footprints in the dew leading straight toward the forest. The next morning, Henry didn't show up for class. His room looked untouched, except for one thing. The words, "Come back," were scratched into the wooden frame of his bed, deep enough to splinter the wood. By evening, his mother found him sitting on the porch, staring into the woods again. When she called his name, he didn't move. When she shook his shoulder, he whispered almost lovingly, "They said it's quieter there." That night, the wind carried a sound no one could explain. It wasn't a scream. It wasn't quite a cry either. It was a voice, echoing through the trees. The same one that had haunted Henry's dreams. Only this time, it wasn't calling to him. It was answering back. "We're here now, Henry." And somewhere deep in the forest, a rope swung gently from a crooked branch, though no one had touched it. The night Henry died began like every other, quiet, cold, and empty. But there was something different about the silence that evening. It wasn't the silence of peace. It was the silence that comes before something terrible happens. The kind that feels alive. The sun had set hours ago, and the moon was hidden behind a heavy veil of clouds. The streetlights flickered weakly, as though they, too, were afraid of the dark. Henry's mother stood in the kitchen, staring out the window, waiting for him to come home. He hadn't said where he was going, he rarely did anymore. He had grown distant, whispering to himself, staring at the woods. Sometimes she'd catch him outside at midnight, talking to the shadows as if they answered back. That evening, he left without a word, just walked past her, barefoot, into the mist. She called after him, but he didn't look back. He carried nothing except a rope, the same rope he'd thrown away days ago. Somehow, it had found its way back into his room. The forest was waiting for him. It was darker than he remembered, the trees leaning closer, their branches shaped like arms. The fog crawled low, wrapping around his feet. The further he walked, the less the world felt real. Every step made a sound not of leaves or twigs, but of whispers, like the ground itself was murmuring, "Welcome back." Henry's breathing quickened. His eyes darted from tree to tree, but everything looked the same. He wasn't alone, he could feel it. The air trembled with something unseen. And then, from somewhere deep in the woods, he heard the familiar voice, the one that had never truly left him. "You promised." Henry froze. The voice came from ahead, from the crooked tree, the one he'd chosen before. He stepped closer, trembling. The tree was different now. Its bark glistened with something dark and wet. The rope he'd tied weeks ago was already hanging there, swaying gently though there was no wind. As he approached, the whisper became clearer. "You tried to leave me, Henry. You belong here now." His vision blurred. The forest seemed to move, the trees breathing in and out, their shadows twitching like living things. Faces formed in the bark. Eyes blinked open from the wood. Henry fell to his knees, clutching his head. "Leave me alone," he screamed. "You're not real." A soft laugh answered. It was coming from behind him. He turned and saw himself, or something that looked like him. Same face, same clothes, but the other Henry's eyes were black. His smile stretched too wide. His neck twisted slightly to one side like it had been broken long ago. "Not real?" the thing asked, stepping closer. "Then why do you still hear me?" Henry stumbled backward, tripping over roots, his hands scraping against the soil. The forest hummed around him, 1,000 whispers overlapping, chanting his name. He couldn't run, he couldn't breathe. The other Henry tilted his head, almost pitying. "End it. Only then you'll be free." Henry looked down at the rope. It was no longer old or frayed. It was fresh, as if waiting. He didn't remember making the loop. He didn't remember climbing the branch. All he remembered was the cold air pressing against his skin, and that voice whispering closer, closer, closer until it sounded like it was inside his skull. "Do it, Henry. Do it now." The rope tightened around his neck. His feet kicked weakly against the air. The forest watched silently. For a moment, it seemed like even the wind had stopped. Then, a sound a crack as the rope snapped into place. The next morning, a man walking his dog found him hanging there, eyes wide open, swaying gently in the morning mist. They buried him 3 days later. The whole town came. The priest said the usual words, but the wind seemed to drown them out. The leaves rustled, though there was no breeze. Henry's best friend, Aaron, couldn't look at the coffin. He kept hearing a faint creaking sound, like a rope swinging back and forth. When the coffin was lowered into the ground, Aaron thought he saw something move inside the grave. Just a shift of the soil, a trick of the light, but it was enough to make his skin crawl. That night, Aaron couldn't sleep. The rain fell softly against his window, and the shadows of the trees danced across his wall. Then came the knock. Once, twice, slow, rhythmic. He pulled the curtain back. No one was there. Only the dark street empty, wet and still. But as he turned away, something caught his eye. Across the road, standing just beyond the light, was a figure, barefoot, head tilted, a faint red mark around its neck. And then, in a voice that didn't belong in this world, it whispered through the glass, "Aaron, open the door." The rain didn't stop for days after Henry's burial. It fell endlessly, soaking the ground until the graveyard turned to mud. The townspeople said the storm was bad luck, that burying someone during a storm traps the soul beneath the earth. Aaron didn't believe in superstition, at least, not until that week. After the night he saw Henry standing in the rain, Aaron couldn't shake the image from his mind. He told himself it was guilt, grief, or exhaustion, but deep down, he knew what he saw was real. It started small, sounds. A knock at the window that came at the same time every night. 3 slow taps. Pause. Then one long scrape down the glass. When he opened the curtain, nothing was there, except for muddy footprints leading toward the forest. Each night, they crept closer to his porch. By the 5th night, Aaron began hearing the voice. At first, it came in dreams, muffled, buried, as though someone was calling through water. "Aaron, help me." The voice sounded broken, fragile, almost human. Almost. He woke in sweat, heart racing, the sound still echoing in his ears. When he turned to his window, it was open. The rain had soaked his carpet, and the air smelled of soil, wet, fresh, grave soil. He whispered into the dark, "Henry." No answer, only the faint creak of wood, the sound of a rope swinging. The next day, he visited Henry's grave. The rain had washed away the flowers people left, and the ground above the coffin had sunken slightly, as if something underneath had moved. The dirt was cracked open just enough to show a hint of wood. Aaron crouched down, heart hammering. That's when he heard it. "Aaron, it's dark down here." He stumbled backward, slipping in the mud. "No, no, no, no." The sound came again, clearer this time. "Please, help me out. I can't breathe." He ran. He didn't look back. He didn't stop until he was inside his house. The door locked, every light on. But even with the lamps burning, the house didn't feel bright. The shadows clung to the corners. That night, he dreamt of Henry again. But this time, Henry wasn't hanging. He was crawling, through the dirt, through the dark, dragging his broken body toward Aaron. And in the dream, Henry's eyes weren't his own anymore. They were hollow, black, and full of hunger. He woke to the same voice whispering by his ear. "You left me there, Aaron. You watched me rot." Aaron screamed and turned on the bedside lamp. Standing at the foot of his bed was Henry, drenched in soil, skin gray, eyes wide and gleaming with wet darkness. His neck bent at an impossible angle. "Henry," Aaron whispered, tears filling his eyes. "What do you want?" Henry smiled. It was a slow, awful smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Dig." Aaron shook his head. "You're dead." Henry's face twitched. "Then help me not to be." The next morning, Aaron tried to tell people what he'd seen. They pitied him, told him grief makes you see things. His mother suggested therapy. His friends avoided him, but the voice didn't stop. Every night, the whisper grew angrier. The air grew colder. Doors opened on their own. The house began to smell of rot. Aaron started to hear scratching from beneath the floorboards, slow and steady like fingernails dragging through wood. Once, he found mud on his pillow. Another night, he woke to find his hands stained with soil. On the 7th night, he gave up resisting. He went back to the graveyard with a shovel. The air was still. The moon hid behind the clouds, and the fog curled between the tombstones like smoke. He found Henry's grave, easily the name carved into the stone. The ground slightly raised. He hesitated, trembling. "Henry, if you're there, I'm sorry." Then came the voice, louder than ever. "Do it now, Aaron. Free me." The shovel hit the ground. Once, twice. The dirt flew. The sound echoed. Sweat and rain mixed on his skin as he dug deeper and deeper until his hands hit wood. He froze. The coffin shuddered. Something knocked back from inside. Aaron dropped the shovel, stepping away. "Oh God, oh God." The coffin lid began to move. Slow at first, then harder. The wood creaked, cracked, split open, and a pale, mud-soaked hand clawed its way out. Nails black and torn. Aaron ran. He didn't stop. He didn't turn around. But before he reached the gate, he heard the voice again, no longer pleading, but furious. "You should have opened it all the way." That night, Aaron dreamed of Henry's face again, but now it was closer, clearer. And when he woke, he realized it wasn't a dream. He was sitting upright in bed. Someone was whispering into his ear, and the voice was cold as the grave. "If you won't help me, Aaron, I'll help myself." The next morning, Henry's grave was found open, empty. The town priest ordered it sealed again, but no one stayed long enough to do it. The smell coming from the hole was unbearable, and inside, pressed into the soft mud, were 2 sets of footprints. One was bare, the other led straight to Aaron's house. The morning after Henry's grave was found empty, the town changed. People didn't say it aloud, but everyone felt it. The streets seemed quieter, the air thicker, the dogs barked at nothing, and the birds stopped singing near the woods. The church bell refused to ring, the rope snapped clean in half. Aaron hadn't slept in days. His hands trembled, his eyes hollow. He'd locked every door, nailed every window shut, and still he heard the voice. Sometimes it came from the walls, sometimes from under the bed, sometimes it whispered inside his mind, soft as breath. "You let me out, Aaron. Now, we're never alone." He stopped going outside, but the evil didn't stay outside either. One evening, a knock came at his door. Slow, gentle. Aaron froze. The knocking continued. "Go away," he whispered. Then a voice answered, a girl's voice. "Aaron, it's Clara. Please open up." Clara was Henry's neighbor, quiet, kind, and always worried about everyone else. Aaron hesitated, then opened the door just a crack. Clara stood there, soaked from the rain, her eyes wide and frightened. "There's something wrong," she said. "Something in my house." Aaron hesitated. "What do you mean?" Clara's lip trembled. "I hear him. Henry. He talks to me when I'm alone." Aaron's blood ran cold. "That's not possible." Clara stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "He says your name too." Aaron let her in. She sat by the fire, shivering, and for a while, neither spoke. The rain beat against the windows like fingers. Then, without warning, Clara's body stiffened. Her eyes rolled back, showing only white. Her head tilted slightly to the left, just like Henry's had when he died. "Aaron," she said. But it wasn't her voice anymore. It was his. Aaron stumbled backward, knocking over a chair. No, 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 no. Clara smiled. Slow, crooked, familiar. You didn't finish digging, Henry's voice said through her. You left me there. Aaron grabbed her shoulders. Henry, stop this. You're dead. Her eyes snapped open, pupils black as tar. Then why do I feel so alive? She began to laugh, not loud, but broken, like a sound struggling to escape a throat that wasn't meant to make it. The fire flickered violently, throwing their shadows across the wall. Then she whispered, It's better here, Aaron. Warm, breathing. I can touch again. Her hand brushed his cheek, cold as stone. Aaron tore himself away and ran to the door. When he turned, she was standing in the center of the room, her head bent backward, whispering to the ceiling. The air around her shimmered, not like heat, but like something alive. The lights flickered, then went out. In the darkness, Henry's voice echoed from everywhere at once. You opened the grave. You opened the way. Aaron ran into the storm, barefoot, soaked, his breath coming in sharp, terrified gasps. Behind him, he heard Clara's laughter, high and hollow. By the next morning, Clara was gone. Her parents said she never came home. The only thing they found was her muddy footprints, leading into the forest, right to the old hanging tree. Aaron couldn't go to the police. He knew no one would believe him, so he went back to the woods himself. The air was still, heavy with the smell of decay. The rope hung from the same branch, swaying gently, but this time, there were 2 loops. He called out softly, Clara? A voice answered, soft and trembling. Aaron, I'm cold. He stepped closer, scanning the fog. Then he saw her. Clara was standing at the base of the tree, her dress drenched, hair matted with dirt. Her head was tilted that same broken angle, and her eyes stared through him, not at him. Henry's here, she said softly. He says he misses you. Then she began to hum, the same lullaby Henry's mother used to sing. Aaron's legs nearly gave out. You're not Clara. Her lips curled into that same too wide smile. But don't you see? He needed a voice. I just lent him mine. For the next several nights, the town was restless. People reported seeing a girl wandering the streets barefoot, her head slightly bent, whispering to herself. Some said she spoke in 2 voices, one male, one female, both broken and overlapping, echoing in ways that weren't possible for a human throat. A farmer saw her sitting on the edge of his roof at midnight, her legs swinging, whispering Henry's name into the wind. When he shouted, she turned her head all the way around and grinned. By the 7th night, 2 more people were gone. Aaron locked himself inside again. The whispers outside never stopped, scratching, tapping, calling. Sometimes he thought he heard Clara's voice. Sometimes it was Henry's. But worst of all was when he heard both at once, speaking from opposite sides of the door. One night, they said something new. You freed us. Now, we'll free you. The door handle began to turn on its own. The lights flickered. The temperature dropped until his breath turned to mist. Aaron screamed and fell to the floor, hands over his ears. But the voices only grew louder, laughing, whispering, chanting his name. When the lights went out again, he saw them both standing in the corner, Henry and Clara, their bodies thin and wrong, their smiles wide and unbroken. Come with us, they said in perfect unison. The earth is waiting. By dawn, the neighbors found Aaron's door wide open. Muddy footprints led from the doorstep into the forest. No one ever saw him again. But sometimes, on windless nights, when the fog rolls down from the trees, people swear they hear 3 voices. One male, one female, and one that sounds like both whispering through the mist. And deep within the woods, on the crooked tree, there are now 3 ropes swinging. No one goes near them anymore. Because sometimes, if you listen too long, one of the ropes stops moving, and you realize it's not a rope at all. It's someone still hanging there, still breathing, still waiting to be free. For weeks, the forest became a forbidden place. Children whispered dares they never took. Adults spoke of curses in half-sentences, as if finishing the words might summon something. Listening in the dark, the air itself seemed heavier, as though the trees were holding their breath. But nothing was more terrifying than the silence that settled over the town after Aaron disappeared. No screams, no laughter, just quiet. Until one night, the quiet broke. A woodcutter named Elias was the first to hear it. He had gone into the woods at dusk, stubbornly refusing to believe in superstition. As he chopped through a half-dead tree, his axe hit something solid, something not wood. When he knelt to check, he found bone. A hand, pale and waxy, curled as if still clawing at the dirt. He dropped the axe and ran. By morning, the story spread a grave had been found in the forest that was not empty anymore. And worse, the rope was gone from the tree. Terrified, the townsfolk went to the only person who dared to intervene, the old Kabirai, a spiritual healer who lived near the edge of the river. They said he was half blind, half mad, but that he could see the things no one else could. When he heard of Henry, his expression didn't change. He simply nodded once and said, "The grave is open. The promise is broken. The spirit has fed too long. It must be called, faced, and buried again properly this time." That night, he gathered his tools, bottles of oil, iron nails blackened by fire, strands of red thread, and a bowl filled with ashes that shimmered faintly green under the moonlight. He warned them, "Do not speak his name, not once, not while we work." 6 men agreed to help. They followed him into the woods, carrying torches that sputtered against the damp wind. But the deeper they went, the colder it grew. Their breath came in white clouds. Their hearts pounded, and then they saw it. The tree, it was alive. The ropes weren't hanging anymore, they were moving, twisting, coiling, tightening. From a distance, it looked like something was breathing through them. The Kabirai whispered a prayer under his breath. "Don't look up," he said. One of the men, a young one, disobeyed. He looked, and he screamed. There were faces in the bark. 3 faces. Henry, Clara, Aaron. Their eyes were open, mouths stretching wider and wider as the wind howled through them, creating a sound that wasn't just wind, it was laughter. The ritual began. The Kabirai drew a circle of salt and ash, then poured oil onto the ground. The flames caught instantly, burning blue. He began to chant. The others joined, their voices trembling, echoing into the trees. The laughter grew louder. Then came the whisper, low and close. "You think you can send me back?" It came from everywhere, inside the fire, inside their skulls. The ropes began to swing again, though there was no wind. "I am not alone anymore," the voice hissed. "We are many now." The torches flickered violently. One went out, then another. Suddenly, the young man who'd screamed before staggered forward, his body jerking. His head snapped backward, eyes white. He spoke in a perfect blend of 3 voices, Henry's, Clara's, Aaron's, layered together like a choir of madness. "You should have left the dead alone." The Kabirai didn't stop chanting. His voice grew louder, sharper, cutting through the air like thunder. He flung a handful of ashes toward the tree, and the fire exploded. A column of white light tearing through the dark canopy. The faces screamed. The ropes writhed like serpents, wrapping around themselves. The ground shook. One of the men was pulled into the air screaming, clawing before the rope tightened around his neck. He dangled there, twitching, until his torch fell to the ground and went out. The Kabirai shouted over the chaos, "Hold the circle, do not break it." But fear broke it before anything else could. One man ran, then another. The circle shattered. The light dimmed instantly, and in the sudden dark, something stepped out from the base of the tree. It wasn't Henry anymore, not Clara, not Aaron. It was taller, its limbs too long, its skin like bark stretched thin over bone, its head tilted, a rope dangling from its neck like a noose that refused to let go. Its eyes were hollow, but inside them, tiny lights flickered like souls trapped in glass. It opened its mouth, and 3 voices poured out at once. "We are free." The Kabirai threw the last of his oil into the fire and slammed his staff into the ground. "Not yet," he roared. The explosion that followed lit up the entire forest. When the flames died down, the tree was split in 2, charred, hollow, bleeding black sap that steamed on the cold ground. The creature was gone, or so they thought. Days later, the forest burned, not from lightning, not from man. It burned from the inside out. The animals fled. The air smelled of sulfur, and when it was over, when the ashes cooled, the Kabiri went missing too. Only his staff was found planted firmly in the center of the burnt ground, wrapped with 3 strands of rope. No one dared to touch it. Now, even years later, people say the fire never truly went out. On some nights, you can see faint blue flames flicker between the trees. If you listen closely, you can still hear the whispers. Soft, tired, endless. Dig deeper, we're still here. And sometimes, when the moon hides behind the clouds, you can see shapes moving between the charred trunks. Tall, thin, necks bent sideways, swaying gently like ropes in the wind. Some say it's just the wind, but those who live closest to the forest know better. Because every year, on the same night, Henry disappeared, the tree grows back, and from its branches, 3 ropes appear once again, waiting. It had been 30 years since the fire. The forest had grown back, though nothing grew right. The trees leaned inward, their bark gray like old flesh. Birds never nested there, and even the wind seemed afraid to enter. The locals still whispered about the old hanging tree, though no one remembered exactly where it once stood. No one, except the Kabiri's last apprentice. In 2025, a group of young documentary filmmakers arrived in the town. They were chasing urban legends, cursed places, haunted lands, anything that would get views online. Their leader, Mara, had heard rumors of the 3 Voices Forest, a place where 3 people had died and 3 ropes still swung when there was no wind. Locals warned them not to go. The forest burns without fire, an old man said. And the ropes still remember necks. They laughed. They had cameras, drones, and lights. Technology made them fearless. So one foggy evening, they went in. The forest greeted them with silence. No birds, no insects, just the soft crunch of leaves under their boots. They walked for hours until the air began to change. The temperature dropped, the light dimmed, though the sun hadn't yet set. Their sound recorder picked up faint whispers, 3 overlapping voices, so quiet they might have been wind. Help us. Don't dig. Set us free. Mara smiled nervously. Perfect, she said. Keep recording. One of the crew members, Leo, noticed something strange. His compass kept spinning. Every direction pointed back toward the same clearing. We've been walking in circles, he muttered. Then, their drone hovering high above the canopy caught something odd. A pattern in the trees. 3 blackened trunks forming a triangle, with something glowing faintly at the center. Mara's eyes lit up. That's our spot. By the time they reached it, dusk had fallen. In the middle of the clearing stood the Kabiri's staff, still upright, half buried in the earth. Around it, the soil was scorched yet wet, as though it had rained only there. A single rope lay coiled around the staff, stiff with age, its fibers dark and sticky. Leo bent down to touch it. Might be real human hair, he joked. The rope twitched. He jerked his hand back. The others laughed nervously until they realized it hadn't been the wind. The rope was moving on its own. They decided to film through the night. Cameras pointed at the staff, microphones recording everything. As midnight approached, fog rolled in thick and heavy, swallowing the trees. The forest went dead quiet. Even the fireflies vanished. The first sound came from the audio recorder. Static, then a breath, then a voice. You shouldn't have come. The voice wasn't from the team. It wasn't even close. It was behind them. They spun around, flashlights sweeping through the mist. Nothing but trees. Then came a low creak, like a rope tightening under weight. Do you hear that? Mara whispered. Another creak, closer, and then, something dropped from above. A rope old, frayed, swinging gently in front of Mara's face. Leo's flashlight caught movement above them, a shape in the branches. Not a man, not an animal, a figure too long, too twisted, its head lolling to one side, rope digging into its neck. Its eyes opened. Henry. The camera caught everything. Henry's face half decayed, mouth hanging open like something still trying to scream. Behind him, 2 more figures emerged from the shadows of the trees, Clara and Aaron, their heads bent, their hands hanging limp. Their feet didn't touch the ground. They were hanging, yet moving forward. Keep filming, Mara shouted, but her voice cracked with terror. The figures began to sway left, right, left in perfect rhythm. ropes tightening with each motion. Their whispers merged into a deep hum, vibrating through the air like a chant. You opened the way. You brought the light back. The ground beneath them began to breathe. The soil pulsed, cracking open in lines that glowed faintly blue. The same cursed flame from 30 years ago. Leo dropped the camera and ran. Something caught his ankle, a rope snaking out from the ground. He fell, screaming. The others tried to pull him free, but the rope coiled tighter, dragging him backward toward the tree line. He clawed at the dirt, his nails splitting, his eyes wide. "Help me." Then he was gone. The rope slithered back into the ground, leaving only blood. The remaining three fled toward the edge of the forest, but no matter how far they ran, the trees never ended. The path kept twisting, returning to the same clearing, the one with the staff. Except now, there were three ropes hanging again. Each one swayed gently. Each one whispered. One rope said, "Mara." Another said, "Stay." The third said nothing, but its shadow looked exactly like Leo. Mara screamed and threw the staff into the fire pit. The ropes reacted instantly, twisting and tightening, the air filling with a chorus of shrieks. Then silence. The rope stopped moving. The fire went out, and from the darkness, a single voice. Cold, calm, almost human. The circle is complete. Only one person made it out. Mara, or what looked like her. A week later, police found her wandering near the main road, covered in ash, eyes empty. She couldn't remember her name, only repeating one phrase over and over. "We didn't free them. We let them in." The footage recovered from her camera showed only glimpses: trees burning without fire, ropes swaying without wind, and faces forming in the smoke. The final frame froze on the Kabir-I staff standing tall again, the three ropes now glowing faintly under the moonlight. Locals say the forest has grown quieter since then, but not empty, never empty. Sometimes hikers go missing. Their camps are found abandoned, but always in the same spot near the triangle of trees. And if you stand there at midnight, you can hear the creaking of ropes, the soft hum of voices blending into one. Some say it's the forest breathing, some say it's just the wind, but if you listen long enough, you'll hear them whisper your name, inviting you to stay. Because the curse never ended, it only learned how to wait. Did you enjoy the story? Let us know in the comments. And if you liked it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to The Horror Dream. Want more stories like this? Subscribe to The Horror Dream, and we'll bring you more darkness, just for you. If you enjoy a little chill down your spine, stick around, like, share, and hit that subscribe button. Right here on The Horror Dream. Your support keeps us going, so stay with us. Subscribe to The Horror Dream for more spine-tingling tales.